Hey, welcome everybody, to LCA, LCS bargaining. It's April 19th, 2023 for our opening session for this bargaining contract. So I want to welcome everyone. If we could go ahead and, get started, with some introductions. We've got some new faces. I know there's few new folks on you guys' team, it appears, and we also have a couple new faces on ours. So we want to go around the room and introduce ourselves. You guys can have the honor to get started.
All right, Elizabeth Emery, LCA Vice President. Before this, I was at Leesburg High School for about 2 years, biology and psychology.
Tracy Wood, CIA.
David Johnson, school psychologist.
Patrick Keller, Leesburg High. Tessa Clark, Leesburg High, and LCA Wood. I'm Angela Dawson, one of the bargaining specialists from MBA.
Julie Llewellyn,
Jake Stein, Lake County Schools.
Andrea St. Lake County. Stacia Warner, Lake County Schools.
Jamie Spiller, Lake County Schools.
Hey, Joe, his assistant.
Chad Farnsworth, Assistant Superintendent, HR.
Regina Zamora, director of trial.
All right, so welcome everyone. It's nice to have some fresh faces on the team. You guys, sent out an agenda. I believe everybody has a copy. Do you guys have a copy? One change on there, if we can add an addition of an F and add insurance. Kathy and I both sit on the insurance committee, and and also Elizabeth has been part of that also. We've all learned a lot. Seems like insurance is the new world all the time, but some of the avenues we're exploring, we can discuss that a little bit. There was a workshop on Monday. They went a little deeper in the weeds on. We'll probably give you the basics on what those discussions have been so far through committee and what's upcoming with that. So we'll add F, insurance. First of all, just kind of as we kicked off last year, we kind of set a direction and set some goals towards ratification. Always with the goal is getting ratified and not spending and wasting a bunch of time spinning our wheels, but getting to the meat and potatoes of the issues and working on some things. I think that this kind of blends into section B because so much does depend this year on legislative topics and then the potential contract implications that blend with those. Hopefully we'll have a little more clarity coming out of this week. I know, I haven't been able to get anything. I got a little quiet, right, for a little bit. For folks that are following the legislation and appropriations, the Senate and the House were very close on the overall dollar amount, but were very different in the way they wanted to treat those dollars and roll up a whole bunch of categoricals into the base student allocation, which makes our jobs a lot more difficult if they were to go that route. I think it was the House that did that. I'm sorry, the House. So that makes our job more difficult because it looks like, oh, look at all this extra money we gave you, but we didn't take away any of the categories you've got to spend it on. I'm not sure what you guys are hearing. The Senate was more of a traditional method, and I'm hoping that's what they go with. As confusing as the FEFP can be, it's even more confusing though when they start hiding the categoricals that are obligations that we have to spend in. And then obviously the voucher expansion is going to have an impact on bottom line dollars. One chamber going to set aside a decent amount of money as a contingency for a reserve, about 350 million. The Senate did, but the House was a much lesser amount to set aside. So basically, when those students take advantage of voucher school, private school vouchers, those dollars are going to follow them, and that'll be an interesting experiment to see how all that goes, right? So that has some implications. And then Obviously, there's, Senate Bill 256 is the one that has some implications on you guys' lives pretty heavily, which has implication on our lives heavily. So those are some of the main ones that jump out, especially with Article 5, being impacted by that particular Senate bill, which has to do a lot of, you guys' membership and how that's managed moving forward. So anything you guys want to discuss on legislative topics or things you want to point out?
To me, you kind of pointed out the major ones that would impact, right now, what we're doing. And what, especially the 256. So, depending on what happens with that, of course, 256 did pass. The House version, which is 1445, has not passed the floor yet. Hasn't reached the floor, it keeps getting delayed, so not for sure what will happen with that. Gossip is, I guess, it'll hit the floor and then of course they'll go down party lines and it'll go through, so. If it does, yes, it will happen, so. Figure out from there.
Gotcha.
But we haven't heard anything really from our department yet, is like, it used to be when they put the money together, first they had the 80-20 split and then it was 50-50, but we're not hearing anything on that right now, so how they want us to implement and carve up that money is a complete unknown, that until we see that final bill, I think how we do TSIA and pay for performance is a complete unknown. And as it is right now, there isn't a single district that can implement all the different laws. People just kind of have a cuckoo platter and they pick a few and go, yeah, this is what we're doing, and DOE so far, but okay, great. And everybody's doing something completely different, and DOE goes, okay, great.
Yeah, they're
As
not.
long as you can justify and say this fits, they're like, okay.
Yeah, they're not a real wealth of information right now, and I agree, that's gonna be, compensation is gonna be the piece that takes a little longer, first find out what we have, and then what rules are they're gonna wrap around it. You know, we press really hard, with our lobbyists, and I know FAD and some other groups too, that just to take some of the strings off that money. I think everybody's on board and wants to do what's friendliest for teachers, especially our ones that have been around with us for a while. So, you guys know, I think we've been on the same page with you guys as far as that goes. And however we can, you know, make that as fair as possible, that'll be our goal moving forward.
So once we finally know when the money is done, what's your typical cycle? Like how many weeks out, months out, does it take you guys to get the information that you need for them to start looking at the budget, to start parsing out what they think is happening? Typically, it seems to me it always takes them about 4 weeks to get you guys an FEFP report, so you even have an idea of how much money you're gonna get.
I'd say that's pretty accurate.
So we're talking about first part of June before we see even a preliminary money.
I think we'll start speculating and creating some projections prior to that, but as far as the bottom line and knowing, I think you're pretty accurate on that.
How long is Scott gonna need to start looking at it before we did, do you guys don't wanna do the budget subcommittee like we did last time, where we kind of sat down and we just chewed on it with the people that like numbers?
Yes,
Because people that don't like numbers have seizures when we start talking numbers.
I think that would be good. I think it's getting an indication of what the rules are gonna be is what is gonna be meaningful, right? So, we'll jump into it as soon as we can get some meaningful information. And I would definitely like a subcommittee with our folks. They even let Kathy in the room and everything.
Yeah, I said, no, I'll think about things, but.
So, yeah, I try to help Guido through all those massive spreadsheets the best I can. So yes, I will be interested in doing that. We'll keep an eye on it and we'll stay in communication on how we manage that. as we blended through here to compensation, all these kind of run together. I know we've had some talk about school psychologists. And I think it's a priority for both groups. So I know you got some folks in the room. So I wanted to put that down as a topic for discussion today. Just to kind of have some entry discussion to see where the minds are sitting and what some ideas are. So you guys have some information on school psychology.
Angela, we don't really have a proposal yet, we've just been gathering data,
Okay,
and what we really have is really some more questions.
okay,
So as we've been learning, we've learned that they are scheduled to work 202 days. And our contract talks about 196. So we feel like there needs to be some clarification somewhere about how many days they actually work. And what we want to check out is what we believe to be true. Is that their supplements still seem to be based on the actual figure that's attached in the contract, which is based on 196. It's not their daily rate. So literally they get less per day for a specialist degree than a teacher does. Because they work more days, so it gets divided across more days. Or are we misunderstanding Skyward?
I think that pretty much with every employee group we have that we give some type of additional degree supplement for, admin, construction, whatever the case may be, it's all based on, it's not based off the different calendars. So I'd say you're correct in that.
So it's a flat rate.
It's a flat rate.
Right. So that's one of the things that we want to correct was with all of the emphasis on teacher-based salary, the linkage to how the psychologist salaries got set has been broken. Because we kept moving the teacher base, but we never moved their base significantly because there also wasn't funding. So what we think we're talking is we really want to talk about advanced degrees for everybody, but also making sure that everybody else's advanced degrees are also prorated so that they get a per day amount for a specialist that's equivalent across everyone, not just, teachers get one rate for specialists and psychologists get another rate. Otherwise, if you do that flat rate, everybody gets a different daily rate of the supplement.
I mean, I think the idea of it being a supplement, I know you say corrected, but I think that's, I haven't ever seen it applied. And maybe it is in other places, but in the places I've seen that it's flat for most places that I've seen. So, I mean, it's definitely a new idea.
Well, we would propose on breaking it out. So if we're going to talk about, we want to do something different, one that can grab where our research that we did. Actually, I printed 22, but we did not for everybody. I can look on the screen. So we pulled the master specialists and PhDs from all of the similar size counties and contiguous counties. And one of the things that we talked about last time was comparing ourselves a lot with Orange and Seminole, so that's why I highlighted them. But you can also see the average master's degree is 2847 across all of our comparables. And we are $472 below that average. And it gets worse the higher you go. So other people's doctorates go much, much higher. Seminole basically is an outlier that really skews everything for everybody.
Yeah.
But, you have a small increase at the bottom and then your gap gets bigger and bigger the farther you go out. So that's one of the things that, last time we wanted to talk about it, we said we would table it because we're trying so hard to implement all the state's crazy rules. So we're hoping there's less crazy rules to change so that we have a little more flexibility. But we wanted to share this research with you to show that we are woefully under, and if you're trying to use this to attract people, this is definitely something that if we don't catch up, People are like, well, I should just go to Orange or Seminole when I get a PhD. I make more money.
We'd also tried to message Tallahassee some help with master's degree, but it looked like that got thrown out. Just with our folks that paying people for master's degree that have like masters in curriculum. And didn't survive when they shifted the bill. But this is something, we can definitely explore, take a look at. So you're saying your thought will be, obviously, this will be a point of emphasis to look at master's degree or advanced degree supplements, but also combine with that the philosophy of tying it to the number of days in contract.
Right, so if we settled on a degree amount for teachers and specialists, we would then use that to base a different number for the psychologists so that they would get the same amount per day, so that their specialist degree is equally awarded rather than discounted because it's spread across more days.
Yeah.
But if that understanding of Skyward's incorrect, please let us know.
I'm not sure if they're. I know there's also that there's also days beyond. So I'm not sure. So basically there's 202 and then there's some folks that can work some days beyond in the summer. If I understand that correct? Okay. Okay.
Oh, so some of them actually do work over the summer then, if they need to have testing or whatever, or finish up.
As far as I've been for 15 years, this summer is the first time that's. They're on.
This is the first time they're doing it.
It's just been 2 days,
Gotcha.
and, you know, there's many different things that we as a group of psychologists have got together. You met with us, so you know, we talked about the speech language pathologists and their Cs, and we put together a list of what their requirements are compared to our national certification requirements, which are actually much higher than, and they get the $3,000 up there. And we're, you know, looking to go beyond that with ours. We talked about these advanced degrees and getting that more in line. And even under the current contract, as we look at it, many of us are confused. Specialist advanced degree differential is $3,325. Then there's the additional advanced degree supplement. Says an additional differential applies to those holding an advanced degree in the subject area of their primary content assignment as following. Makes it sound like to all of us, we should be getting that extra $800. But we're not getting that extra $800, we're getting the $3,325.
The additional is. I know I can't really speak to you guys' area, so I'll have to do some research on
I mean,
that.
we're all school psychologists, and that's where our degree's in, school psychology. So it makes it sound like it's something we should have been getting this year.
Okay.
As well as, you know, our numbers are very low.
Oh, yeah.
We budgeted for 25 for a number of years now. We're at 14 and times maternity leave below that. You know, coming up with a plan possibly to figure out a way that we were asked to take on so much more work, you know, to compensate us for that work that we're taking on. Because in many cases, we're doing the work of, you know, 1.5 people instead of just one, you know.
Understood. After Kathy and I met with you guys last time, on the LRC, we, you know, of course, came back, debriefed superintendent on the discussion. And also in our executive session, recently, recommended school psychology as a priority to the board. So they're aware of some of the things that we discussed also.
Which brings, I guess, back to the idea of, like, we're saying this summer's going to be the first time that they were doing something, so would that be, like daily rate of pay also? I mean, like the others, I'm assuming it would be the same. Of course, we haven't talked about it yet, but I mean, we'll get to it. But, and leading into that plus the idea of budgeting, because I know there's been a question about the summer school. Whereas because some are paid daily rate, but then some are only paid $30, and it's like, wait a minute, that's not, I mean, it needs to be all the same.
And we identified that as an issue, as we were closing things up last year, and, I've got an updated MOU to present today that rectifies that issue. We're definitely on board and heavy recommendation, gotta give credit to the CFO that needed to happen. Have a contract language on here, just, I know we'll have potential articles that come forward through reopeners. We don't have any reopeners prepared for today. A topic though, that is a new topic that we had discussed in the past, but it was kind of one of those things, it died quickly. There's a desire from the board to reintroduce the idea of, some sick leave buyout things at the end of the year. We did research on it 1 year, brought it forward, then it wilted fairly quickly. But we figured it's something maybe we could reintroduce, because they've been approached by some, both instructional and non-instructional employees who were interested in it. With the concept of like, there's statute around what you can do, and they cap it at like 80%, things like that, but we'll be bringing back some more information to bring to the group on in future sessions with that. So that's kind of new, but it doesn't really exist in I guess it would in sick leave, in the article that addresses leave, but that's one thing that we had. I don't know, I imagine some of the familiar articles that we always dive into will come about, but I didn't have a whole lot in speaking about language today.
Well, we've only been looking really at 2 articles. One of them is leave, the same thing that you've been talking about.
Okay.
The other, yeah. I've kind of squashed them when they want to talk about 10 and 11. For 2 reasons. One is we just got done.
Yeah.
And we really haven't had a chance to even fully see what the understandings, how that's changed or implemented. I think it's got an uneven rollout, and that some people may not be following the changes that we made, etc. So we were hoping that, is there any research that you've done or any follow-up to, like, have you trained the principals about what we discussed at the table about what constitutes planning time and how to add some of those things up to kind of start to put the kibosh on some of the complaints, because we keep changing the language. No one's gonna follow what we write, doesn't matter. Our only option then will be to file a grievance. We'd rather figure out how to train people to do it correctly. So I steered them away from that so we can get a chance to make sure that everybody's following the same language.
Gotcha. As far as like research, not a whole lot of research other than hearing things and then correcting things as we go. I know we do have a lot that feel like they're following the letter of the contract and doing what they're supposed to do. And then it's just a matter of trying to figure out where you guys feel like we're deficient in not meeting the language. And I think a lot of it probably centers around collaborative planning and some of the things we've talked a lot about in the past and the
Some of the same
utilization of things.
Plus the fact
Yeah.
that, I mean, elementary still doesn't have the plan time in the morning and in the afternoon. We're still fighting that in several of the schools. And I mean, if it's not in the language, they're not gonna follow it. And I mean, I'm getting kind of frustrated with having to call you all the time and tell you that they're still not doing that. And I don't think we should have to do that. And I think that they should have to realize that we're going back to pre-COVID and that's it. I mean, it's, figure out a way. You used to do it, so why can't you do it now?
But a lot of that just, not in here, but identifying the schools, the specific schools and let us address it.
I hear you're saying that you would like them to report to you where the problems lie, to give you a chance to address it.
Yes.
And then our only option is if things don't change.
And I know that some have still not changed after talking to Chad.
move back to chat, and then we need to file a grievance and call the principal on carpet and have a conversation. Because sooner or later, they will follow the language. More than one way to force this.
Because there are several that are not. And then there are several that say, well, we did a vote.
Yeah,
And the vote was, you know, I'm like, no, there are no votes. It's like, you do it, period. It's supposed to be, they go to the cafeteria, they go to the media center, whatever they do, but they can have the 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes in the afternoon. Some of them will be okay in the afternoon, but not in the morning, or vice versa. So same thing with, you know, I mean, I know we have some of the high schools and middle schools, whatever, that do, you know, they have like an extra duty that people are doing and they're paying monies and whatever, but it's the same idea. I mean, you can't split up duties, figure out how you do it, you know. And I do know that there are administrators that kind of press the issue that, oh, well, no, you don't have, you'll have more time, you'll have more duties, and you'll have, I mean, it's just, it's the way they present it. And to be honest with you, I mean, just listen to their administrators. They do, and so they believe what they say. Same thing with these wonderful Wednesdays. I mean, it's like they promote it to where it's wonderful and it's great, and then they get into it, and it's like, oh, I don't have that thing with my friend. I mean, it's like, it's hard. It's hard to not have a break all day. And there are several of them that are still doing that, which seems like a wonderful idea to have the plannings and to have everything. But then it's hard. Because now they stretch it out to everybody, so now it's not just once a month, now it's like every 6, 7, or 8 weeks that you may have that day of planning. So it's difficult, it really is.
And I think there's probably a variety of reasons that things are happening in different places, right? So I hate to throw a blanket over any of them, depending on where they're at. So, I mean, I know like some, it's to help. There's some traffic flow and some things that are related to our transportation issues that we've had and how we've dealt with some of that and making sure that, you know, especially with some of the interesting student behaviors we've seen, the dynamics of stacking several hundred kids together is not quite the same as what it was before. So, but it's something we need to look at and continue to address, especially the people who, you know, if there's someone else that we need to talk to and that it seems very repetitive. I mean, I would like to avoid a grievance to get to a solution, because then it, you know, that can become a big contentious, obviously. So I think we can manage and we can figure it out, especially as we see things get better with our transportation stuff in the afternoons and in the mornings. Anything else under kind of the first few headings that we worked through?
we did have a couple of things that, when we left bargaining, you said you had to do more research into it, and I'm wondering if you
Okay.
had enough time. One of them was virtual,
Mhm.
the other one was the phone system. So we'd asked to have individual mailboxes, and there was some discussion about when the new phone system was going to go in and how that would work.
Well, I'll get an update on the phone from Mr. Weeks, and next time we're together, I can give an update on that. I can tell you that, you know, back to where we were before, time consuming. Understand the issue, and it really boils down to the capacity of what our current system can do. And also time and expense, it's pretty hefty there, so I'll see kind of where they're at with that. We putting in, I can say, instituting a new student management system has been the priority. Shifting from Skyward to Focus, and that's been their major project, so haven't heard a whole lot of talk about phones, to be honest with you. Virtual, kind of, we went through a transition there with staffing and trying to right size virtual school back to, you know, before we had the influx of folks with COVID. We probably stretched that out a little longer. But we had to adjust back because it was very, expensive because it was over allocated, so we've reduced those allocations and gotten back there, so figuring out, okay, how's all that land and what we look like, moving forward with virtual and how much of the weight shifts back to adjunct, and different things of that nature, so we can get some updates on that, not exactly sure what those impacts look like yet, but.
And the other one that we were kind of want to, I guess, go back and look at, review from last year, the idea of the, because we had asked for like a different timeline for the transfer and reappointments and stuff. We're getting a lot of phone calls now that, you know, the issues are coming up now that, well, I transferred during transfer week, and now I find out that my principal is not staying, or my principal's moving, or my whatever. And we had asked, I'm pretty sure last year, and talked about the fact of having some sort of timeline or something that we can put in here that things are done in a certain manner so that we don't have as many of these transfers due to possibly administrative changes. And we know that there are some teachers that still haven't heard anything about whether they're reappointed or not. The transfer period is already done. You also have, I believe, Saturday a job fair that people are contacting us and saying, well, hey, what am I supposed to do now? Because, you know, I don't know whether I have a job or not. And if I don't have a job, I'd like to do a job fair. So again, that whether it's communication, whether it's whatever, but this needs to be streamlined, and we need to figure out how we can do this to where it's this happens, then this happens, and this happens, and it's a certain set dates when everything goes.
I think the sequential order of how we manage our HR timeline is very consistent. I think year in, year out, the administrative announcements, they're gonna vary every year. This year in particular, as today, there were some announcements, it was pretty much dominoes falling and impacting people from different directions. We did hear one circumstance this morning, to where hopefully it got rectified today, to where, people were notified. As far as, I don't think there's gonna be drastic, issues with reappointment for that school, thank goodness. But I'll be following up on that in the morning to see where we're at, but typically that is not something that occurs. Even if there's gonna be, a principal transition or administrative transition, every school, is held to the timeline and how they follow that. That's part of what drives the timeline is also, you know, wrapping up evaluations and different things that come into play there and having enough time to get everything done in a good fashion. But
Right. Well, and we've said that before too, that, I mean, evaluations supposedly don't have to be done till May 1st, which I think is way too late. Because the teachers need to know before the teacher's supposed to know before that they're reappointed, why wait? And the evaluation should be done before they're told whether they're reappointed or not. Now, I do know that some are done and some are not, but again, and we have many that I know of that are not being reappointed and they've already had the evaluation and they're effective or highly effective on their portion of course.
by statute,
We don't know what,
reappointment is not to be tied to evaluation.
no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying the fact that some of the teachers are saying, well, how do they know? Why am I not reappointed and I haven't even had my evaluation yet? Or, you know, things like that. So of course, they don't understand that. I do, but they
Yeah.
don't. But I mean, it's just a courtesy thing that, how can they know that I'm not doing my job? They really haven't been in my room that much and I haven't had my evaluation. And I've got 27 years in and I'm not being reappointed, and I've got 19 years in and I'm not being reappointed, and and I mean, we hear a lot of that, and it just doesn't make sense that, and then they say, well, I don't know whether I have a job or not at all, because I haven't been told yet that the job fair is Saturday. I mean, it's like,
I tell
You know,
you,
and then
there
like,
might
what
be
you-
one school that might have that circumstance, and there's probably not many people out of that would probably be attending that job fair, but typically that is not something that happens. I can tell you, we can't have one less minute to complete evaluation. Our principals and our administrators are stretched out as thin as possible, completing evaluations on the current timeline that we have. And that's talking to them on a regular basis and monitoring the rate very heavily at which they're getting those evaluations completed. So that, I mean, I know I'm speaking for you guys a little bit, but it's because I see the data across the school. And they're grinding on them and they're trying to get them complete, and he's on them like a hawk all the time too. But I understand what you hear, but I think people understand where they stand with their administrator pretty well. And while they might not have the full complete evaluation, I mean, we don't even get summative until, you know, all the data comes in anyway.
oh, and I understand that, it's just. They feel like, you know, especially ones that have been, I mean, they may be first year, but they've been around a long time. I mean, maybe first year at that school, or first year somewhere else, but I mean, they've been around a lot. And, to their point, I mean, they're frustrated because I've been teaching for all this time, you know, and I'm annual contract, it's, you know, they can do that, unfortunately. And, you know, it's like, especially now, when you think that he teachers. So I'm not for sure. Again, I mean, I said it several times, but I mean, unless that teacher is really cannot handle that position, and I can't see that it's every year, it seems like we have over 100 people at least that are not reappointed, and I can't see that there's that many that could not. Some of them, I would think, would be able to be in a different position or helped along the way, because yeah, we see potential in you, we just need you to do this, this, and this, you know, and something like that. And so, because we are in such a teacher shortage, that it's like you would think that there would be a little bit more, you know, and then I heard the one that said, well, they haven't made up their mind yet, they'll let me know Monday after the job fair. Well, I'm sorry, if I'm saying that to a teacher, that teacher to me is gonna say, oh my God, they're gonna say, okay, yeah, well, they're looking for somebody else better than me, but then I can come back Monday and maybe get that job. That's not very nice.
Well, I think I'd like to know specifics on especially issues like that, because I imagine there's some context around that also, whether or not they've finished all their certification needs and things of that nature, because a lot of times that comes into play. I'll tell you now, I've yet to meet a principal that's running off good teachers. They know they need them also.
Chad, I think one of the things that we've experienced through our school, I think we've told the people, but I just feel like the amount of people that answer because they haven't signed the roster.
Reappointment.
It's a little bit different.
And that
this year
shares.
process.
So I think that's the question is, for reappointments, what exactly is there notification if you're reappointed, official, like you are reappointed? Or do we just wait until the roster? Or if you're not, is there like, if you're not reappointed, do they receive a paper that they sign? Or is there any official documentation? Like, because it says that they're supposed to be reappointed prior to transfer period. Yeah, so is there an official document that a teacher receives one way or the other before that transfer period? Is there?
Traditionally, it is signing of the roster.
Yeah.
That's your, because everybody gets that letter, you know, you get that letter.
Yeah,
It's kind of saying you
You
get-
don't have to rewrite our.
So that's kind of that part of it. It's traditionally signing the roster, which has been a little bit different this year. I think that's leading to something.
Okay, all right. That makes
Sign the
sense.
roster means you're reappointed.
So then they wouldn't be
But
notified.
when you sign the roster, it's whether you're being reappointed or not reappointed. You have to acknowledge you.
And so that's done prior to the transfer period.
We did not.
The conversations we're having.
Conversations happen with the roster. Like right
Okay.
now, they don't have the signed roster.
So we have
There
to-
is an official, let me go back there is an official timeline in which we communicate with school administration and HR contacts, in which by a certain date, all professional service contract teachers are reappointed. Administrators have a discussion with them prior to transfer period. After that, there's another week that passes by, and they notify all the annual contract teachers once any instructional placements are completed because of PSC teachers that needed to be placed prior to appointing annual contracts. Administrators that have those discussions with those teachers. And if they're not reappointed, that's a discussion that they're having with them so that they can participate in transfer period. The reappointment roster is the official closure of officially signing you've been reappointed and not reappointing based on that conversation they've had with the teachers.
And again, what we're saying is that's the exact process. In the past years, we've always had the conversation and they sign around the same time. Not
Okay.
every year, but generally in the past. And I think that's kind of the confusion this year. It's not.
And, okay, so this year, then, I guess, why wasn't supposed to do that?
Because we're closing.
Yeah.
A lot of, some of the particular things we've had this year that have been a little different is, and last year, when we're opening and closing schools, that really tinkers with our reappointment timeline, and when we have conversion charters that are going offline with us, and there's potential of people coming over from that, and then also doing a kind of a mass reallocation to virtual, create another issue where we had to place a decent amount of people too. So I would speculate that's why there's been, you know, some differentiation from what we've done in previous years.
And that's why, I mean, we've been putting out the fact that they should know already by now.
Yeah.
And that's why.
And
we're
they
getting
should.
back saying that they don't know.
They should. I can only think of one school in particular that would have been an issue, and it was held up due to some administrative transition, which is not normally the case. I was very surprised when I found that out.
Well, when something like that happens, it would be very helpful if you could just reach out and tell Kathy and Elizabeth, hey, it's blowing up at this school because of an administrative change, and so they're not gonna meet these timelines. So if you hear from these people, that's what's going on, because nobody likes surprises. You guys don't like surprises, we don't like surprises.
Well, I found out today, so.
Well, but on the other hand, I mean, like, I've had two different schools that I can think of right now that I know that they said that they either don't know. and then-
Schools or people?
Well, the people that are at a particular schools, they don't know.
Because I don't think we have whole schools that have had that issue, but if there's an individual, I have no problem with you guys letting us know and us looking into the circumstances around it.
And then, same thing with, I mean, I know that, I mean, until everybody knows, I know that's difficult, but it would be nice if I knew the administrative changes so that I could then also kind of know that, okay, yeah, we may have some questions from some people because of something happening. I mean, that would be nice also.
Let you take that up with my boss. She's the one that does those announcements, and she doesn't always know what is gonna happen until close to the line also, and,
It's kind of the, I understand, but it's like, then when they know, then they call and it's like, I don't even know what's going on.
and I think Ms. Corning goes out of her way to make sure people know the things they need to know as quick as she can, and in an effort to always do what's best for kids. So, you know, if it's something that also in turn, doing what's best for kids, usually what's doing best for teachers, right? So she's always trying to do those things. So, I mean, we can talk to her a little bit about the timing of announcements, and we discuss them. So,
So do you put out like an administrative bulletin in the spring that says, by the way, you have to have this in by this, and this done by this, and talk to your PSCs here, and talk to your ACs and all that? Can we get a copy of that each year, just so if they know, when people call in, you can say, look, the timeline hasn't been met yet, it says they have until next Tuesday. You know, we're trying to help cut off some of the crazy. But we don't know sometimes when they're crazy.
And I think we can definitely share some of that information. It's just that, and they'll even tell you that the document they get, it's in bold at the top, tentative. Because there's things that can change within that timeline and things that can get off and wonky and, but it is, like I said before, the sequence of it is very consistent. It might have got a little whack on the signing of the roster this year, but.
But knowing that that closes the period is also helpful, you know, just having that information. So that when people call and ask questions, they can at least say, oh, it's right here.
Mhm.
Or, oops, yeah, that doesn't seem normal now, I know, because otherwise you're gonna get a lot of phone calls. Because we don't know if they've violated the program if we haven't seen it. Let us help you.
But
It's easier when it's communications there, and we can both help each other. So ordinarily, it's not a piece of paper or anything, it's just you're signing the roster, whatever it's called, on Skylar.
Everybody gets that letter, ahead of time. It's in Scotland, it is a.
It's like a notification.
They-
And they have to go in and they can
Yeah.
sign the little acknowledging that,
They just.
For every employee initials by their name,
yeah.
that they've been
So to
reappointed for
me,
next
it's,
school
okay,
year.
you're saying, like you're acknowledging reappointment or not.
Correct.
It's basically
Correct.
what it is, correct? Yes.
It will tell you on that paper whether you're reappointed or not.
Yes, it's reappointed, not reappointed.
On the roster.
On the roster.
It's just the process.
Someone who's not reappointed doesn't get anything in writing that they're not reappointed. Because they can't take a copy of the assigned roster.
No, but they do initial that roster that they're not reappointed in that. But we don't provide a notification to them.
So, but that's, yeah, that's not really saying that they're not, I mean, I understand they're acknowledging that they're not reappointed.
How do you handle that with
So-
unemployment?
Yeah, I mean,
You don't reappoint these teachers, they go file for unemployment, then what? Does unemployment contact you and say, did you get hired? Did you get-"
you don't get unemployment as a non-reappointed.
Non-reappointed person.
Are you sure?
They have also by contract, they have until September 15th, let's say, to regain employment with us without losing continuous service.
Sure, that's if they get reappointed,
They'll get hired.
right? But honestly. Other counties, people get unemployment. And the state has actually put out guidance on it that you shouldn't apply until after you've missed the first day in August. To show that you weren't rehired, but literally, I know that people have gotten unemployment. In other counties. But I've never heard that they're not eligible for unemployment. I've heard that you're fired, you're not eligible for unemployment. But never not reappointed. You completed the contract that you worked. They
Correct.
just didn't continue your contract, so you weren't fired, your job ended, which makes you eligible for unemployment.
just like,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
technically a version of layoff.
because they didn't resign.
It's a job that they just like 1 minute.
But I will say some of the administrators are trying to, I'm gonna say it, some of the administrators are trying to force people into signing a resignation. Not for sure why. They're saying that it's better for them and you just sign this and then it's for sure you can get then another job somewhere and they're coming up with all kinds of different scenarios. So when I get that information, I'll let you know.
Well, I've been involved with one that was requested to resign in the same manner that you're explaining it. And it was because the employee did not want to accept the offered position for next school year. So because the person was declining the position, the principal had communicated to the employee, you will need to resign if you don't want that position. So I went back and had a discussion with the principal and said, we cannot ask for a professional service contract teacher if she doesn't want that position to resign. We're placing her in that position by contract. If she chooses not to show up to school next school year, that's different. But at this time, that was retracted, so it might be because they're choosing not to accept offered position, they're being told, well, you will have to resign if you don't want it, because that is the position you're gonna have next school year. So I can understand what you're saying, but at the same time, it could be that the employee is choosing not to want to accept their assignment. So the principal would advise that if you don't accept it, then I guess you're resigning. But in this case, it didn't
Yeah.
happen. In this case, that resignation was retracted because I was not gonna process that way. I was not gonna
Right.
put that employee in that position. But I could see that happen.
And I think that does happen sometimes, but,
And I have others telling in principals, well, I'm gonna go look for another job because I don't like that. So they're putting themselves.
yeah, but even if they're saying that, it doesn't mean they're not going to possibly come back and, I mean, they're frustrated at that point because they're not being reappointed. So sometimes we say things that,
No, there's
Yeah.
some that are reappointed and they don't like the position they're reappointed and they're choosing.
and that's
Not to take
understandable too, but and I guess another question would be. When the principals are moving, they are moving them into something that they are certified in, correct?
Correct. In this case, it was certification. It was
I thought I had-
perfectly within field, not out of field. I asked that same question. At least the ones that have come through my desk, I have taken care of the correct way. So,
I get. I'm thinking back just in terms of previous years, not this year. I remember when I first got here. I think whenever there'd be an adjustment in allocations. And then all of a sudden you've got, say, you had 5 math allocations, you've been cut to 4, you got 5 math teachers. There might have been offers to, rather than have you go into placement, accept a position out of the field. Those are some circumstances I can see that happening in. But as far as just arbitrarily placing people out of the field, that's not something that we support.
And I do know that certification is working with all administrators, with the teachers that are working on their certification, so. Including the ones on temps. We're already in that process, so those teachers are not being forced out. We're working with them before we can officially reappoint them.
Because you'll have several of them that.
Correct. So we are working with all those.
Because they maybe not have to take the general knowledge, but now they don't have, it. So now with their evaluations, they can.
And I will just say that, it happened very quickly. There were 2 that I could not reappoint.
And we-
Because of that.
So
The next day, I was able to go back.
once that seminar
You guys were
happened,
doing it very
yeah, once that DOE happened, very next day I had our program with fixing every roster to make sure all those teachers were reappointed. So as we get the information, we quickly move to reappoint.
So how many people do you think that change in the law, corrected for you? How many people that you don't have to go find someone else to do the job?
I don't have that number in front of me, but I would quickly say close to probably 200, 100 and
Wow.
something, yeah,
I had at least 12.
yeah.
Wow.
It's close to 200. There were some strike, but I don't wanna
It's
give
safe
you,
to say that most of your non-renewals are for certification reasons, not because you're not a good fit for my school.
correct. There were, yeah, there was some,
Certification to be a self-inflicted pain.
yeah,
They didn't pass the test, there's nothing you can do about that.
and in some cases it's a test that somebody's been taking multiple times. Or they haven't met the requirements needed, coursework and all that, but it did help with this last pass that if we were able to. We are still working on the ones that were on their extension already, because they're already
Yeah.
at the max, so we're waiting on DOE clarification to see if they were still gonna make it a 7-year term or not. That they did not clarify.
So when you have the final list together of all the people that you're dismissing for non-renewal, not because their certification was not done, but. Cause you can't legally keep them on. But the people that were certified that you decided to part with, you guys have a list that you present to the school board? Or is it just, it buried in the HR list of who's terminations and hires and stuff in the school board report?
I mean, we track non-reappointments, but there's no reason the board approve,
Correct.
a
No, it's
contract.
end up on an HR list someplace that's in the.
We track them through recruitment and retention because we try to remarket to them and make sure they're hitting our job fairs, make sure we're looking for other opportunities, because sometimes it's true, it's not a good fit. It's down, and I've heard you guys and also the board's similar desire, look, you know, we've loosened up a little bit on providing a little more information when those non-reappointments occur. We have to be careful though, because people get litigious very quickly, and I'd rather be giving raises to teachers than spending money on lawyers. But we have loosened a little bit on that, and what I tell them is don't get down into the weeds of particular circumstances and a sparring match there, because that's not what it's about. But sometimes it isn't a good fit, sometimes they need a different grade level. And we've also seen, it's a mixed bag what the reasoning is. We've seen a lot of people influx into teaching that you guys know that don't necessarily have the chops to teach. And hopefully by improving salaries, we can, you know, attract the high quality talent back in and folks that are born to be teachers like the people in here, and not some that are just wanting to stick their toe in it and give it a try. So I think that's kind of for some of those difficult conversations also. It's been kind of interesting, but we do track the departures and the methods. The most ambiguous piece of the data we collect are people that will not divulge why they are leaving. It's personal reasons is all they'll say, and that's it.
They become part of it.
And since you brought that up, is there any way that we could improve that? Because I know it's like, it's an exit survey, interview, whatever you want to call it, where they fill out the little form, but then they're supposed to give that form to their principal. And if they're leaving due to that principal, I'm not gonna say that I'm leaving because of my principal and hand it right to my principal. So is there a better way of getting some of the information to be more truthful? And maybe that's why they're saying personal reasons. Now, personal reasons could be, yes, I need to leave and I'm going out of town, or whatever. But there also could be other things that they don't really want to particularly divulge because of situations. So would there be a better way of handling that? Like, could it be sent just straight to HR, or could it be sent to?
So we've explored that in the past, and what we've done is behind what happens at the schools, we've reached out straight from HR to the individuals, and it did not yield very little to no information from the folks whenever we did that. So it's something we're always looking at, because I think the board's always interested in that also. And it's something we're interested in from a recruitment and retention standpoint. And when we've tried some creative methods, and it wasn't just through email, different things, you know, we've tried some different ways to garner that information, and we have not been successful in that. So it's not, and they probably similar, right? They're not wanting to document any, you know, issues that they have.
Some of them have kind of said to me that, well, you know, I give it to my principal, I don't want to give it to my principal, you know, it's like, I'm not gonna tell them. You know, I don't say that I'm talking to them, if that's particularly why they are leaving. I mean, I would wanna say that and then hand it to that person and do that, you know. Being honest here, I don't know.
Also,
I mean-
it's through the secretary, it really is. It's good,
But Well, even now, I mean, you know, secretary, and think about it, they're probably gonna show it to everybody, hey, this is what, you know.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
we have to sign.
I mean, it's like, you still see it, so it's like they know that, so. And that's why I was asking.
And there's not a whole lot of secrets out there by the time it reaches that point.
Sure not, but it would be nice to be able to have a little bit more specific data, but.
It's very hard to collect. Not everybody puts a letter or attaches a letter to them. They come to my office too for signature, and I look at them because I'm curious. And it's very few actually going depth as to why they're leaving.
Interesting.
So any other kind of open topics or new topics?
Last time we did talk about the transfer of sick leave to non-family members, and that was one of the things that you said because it crossed bargaining units, that we probably have to set up a subcommittee, so I was wondering, we had that discussion with management and the other union, are the parties amenable to that subcommittee, to start talking about what that process might look like?
I think we can talk about it and see what SEIU thinks, but it also blends into our sick bank was the main issue. Once you get into just donating, it becomes a popularity contest, and then people are all of a sudden, you know, teachers, employees, anybody are being solicited for their sick leave, and there are a lot of issues that were tied to that. It wasn't just solely across the units, but I mean, we can discuss it. I think as we talk about that entire, you know, whatever you guys looked at as sick leave, and then, you know, looking at the possibility to buy out the sick leave as a whole, we can look at and talk about different aspects of it.
Yeah, that was the attendance incentive, a sick leave buyback, that is not Article 18. Please.
They were talking about the city, yeah, so.
Are you guys okay if we, for the sake of time, we move to the MOU section? I didn't, because there are multiple pages, I didn't print a copy for everyone. So two different MOUs that are time sensitive. And they're renewals of ones we've done in the past, so they. No, those just the capital.
Just to capital.
Yeah. First being summer school. Summer school has continued to evolve. First and foremost, it's the last item on there, but just want to point out that, you know, it was brought to our attention. I think as a group, we realized that, you know, based on historical methods of grant funding and how they budget that, and back when those were enticing amounts before, you know, teachers' hourly rate exceeded those numbers, that those numbers have been around for a long time, the $30 an hour and things like that. We definitely want to rectify that and move it to, if teachers are working in summer school, no matter which summer school program they are in, they'll be making their hourly rate. So that's the last big portion of the summer school MOU, but it's the most important, I feel like, because the rest is just really dates and times. And there's a few new things on here, just so you guys have an awareness. We've got an incoming kindergarten program that'll be happening at 3 sites. There we've got pre-K that's separated K3, 4, 5, and then 6, 12. And then we've got our extended school year after that. Those are separated from the summer school program overall. Because for the most part, the workday looks the same for the pre-K through 12. But when you get to the extended year student with disabilities, whether it's from the elementary level or at the Lake Hills sites, the dates and times, they differ from one another, and you can see those. And then lastly, the selection's a little bit different, not from practice, but since things that have expanded and, you know, some are summer school positions like, third grade reading require certain, evaluation levels and different odds and ends certifications, right? And then traditionally, what we do with the other ones that don't have strings attached to them, the host administrator solicits the summer school opportunities to people that are certified within their schools. If they do not have enough people that are interested within those schools, then they open that and solicit the other schools to fill those spots. So it's what our people have been accustomed to, and we haven't had problems that came out of that. If anything, we're more worried about having enough people to participate.
So, since you didn't make copies for all of us, is there any way you could project this so we could?
Nope. Be honest with you, you can see my copy, you can pass it around.
Well, I'm just curious because we've had a lot of discussions in our department about this, so I just.
Okay.
Yeah, and I see that the summer school Monday through Friday.
Some of the programs are Monday through Friday, some of them are
So we
Monday
could
through
have,
Thursday.
like staff there on Fridays, we're not doing the Friday off.
For summer school, it's different for some of the summer school programs, and
Okay.
and it's been like that.
Sure.
Mhm.
So they're like, okay with not having a
Yes,
custodian there or whatever.
they'll be staffed with the proper personnel outside of instruction, yes.
Okay, that's, I guess, my first concern, I guess.
Yeah.
The second, so you got different dates here, okay, Monday, Friday, okay. Still the 5.5 hours. And you said like the pre-K was also in 3 schools, are most of these only in 3 schools, 3 areas like we've done in the past, or there more than 3?
There's they vary, it's different. Some of the programs have 3 schools and some of them are more widespread. I've got lists of them. Unfortunately, my Zoom won't let me minimize. And so I can pull it up because I had to, let me see if I can get it to. Yeah, they allow me to. So your elementary summer school host sites are at 3 schools. That's Pine Ridge Elementary, Sorrento Elementary, and Treadway Elementary. Your secondary learning sites, everyone's running summer programs,
All
secondary sites,
high school, all high school,
high schools and middle schools.
the middle school grade 6.
Yeah,
Every middle and high school is running a summer
yes.
school. That's the last item.
Let me get to. Trying to find my. Your incoming kindergarten, sites are Rhymes, Cypress Ridge, and Eustis Elementary School. And then your ESY. You've got all of your ESY access school kids, elementary. You've got some of them at Sorrento, Treadway, and Pine Ridge. You've got some students that participate at Lake Hills, mainly secondary, and they're Lake Hills students. And then the academies of Lake Hills and Mascot are north and south. Those folks are there. So it used to be a simple, small thing.
Yeah,
But
it's not now.
They provided, more funding that are specific for those types of activities, so we've been able
So the
to.
funding is
handle
coming out of something different?
A lot of them come from different grants and it just depends, so.
Okay, and then how are if they're working, for example, Friday, that Monday through Friday, then, secretary or so whatever, I mean, how are they paying them? Then? Is that out of these grants or whatever?
If it's out of the grant, then that's been budgeted through that grant to support the. Whatever their need.
Okay.
Whatever they've determined to be those needs.
And without having a calendar for me, I'd have to know, but I mean, I'm assuming you looked at all these dates and you made sure that the hours and the dates and everything was.
Yep.
Sure, I'm assuming. Glad you might have done soon, but I usually look at the dates and look at.
I mean, you can take your copy with you and we can exchange. The main thing is just trying to get the opportunities presented to the teachers so they can start planning ahead of time. But I mean, that's something that the main one is the next one that I'd like to, which I've sent you guys a draft to take a look at it, and we've talked a little bit
Yes, we talked about.
with SI school.
Yeah.
That mainly is so we can market at the job fair, to attract talent with the 4 schools that are included on that. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But, just so you know, the complexity of the summer learning programs, they divided with ESE handles all the extended school year, then you've got curriculum instruction and assessment handling the kindergarten through 5th grade, and then you've got school improvement and alternative programs that handle secondary and incoming kindergarten. So you've got all these departments on the academic side of the house that are pulling whatever available funds they have, depending on what department it comes through, and trying to put together some quality programs to really, help with some learning loss that's occurred over the past couple of years for reasons we know.
So you're saying it's Monday through Friday? Summer school.
No,
Some
they're
of them.
different. That's,
Kindergarten
look on
and
yeah,
incoming,
it's labeled on there.
it's incoming kindergarten and pre-K are Monday to Friday. It's probably another reason just because it's easier on the parent because
It's like
it's
daycare, like
daily daycare for one day. Which then makes sense. The others are Monday to Thursday.
And if you guys see a date discrepancy on there, please point it out.
Yeah, everything else matches with what we've done in the past, I believe. This is kind of totally that big deal. So. And then the hourly rate. So I think we're okay. And they have the one pre-planned day. What's under the teacher dates and hours? There's the June is just Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
When we pull up now.
There's June 5th, 6th, 7th, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 12, 13, 14, 19, 20, 21.
Are you in the ESY section?
I'm in Yes,
Yeah. It's based on, that's all based on what ESC, every year they've had a
okay,
different way of doing things for extended school year.
so they only do then the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, then, and there's. Okay. All right. That's why it's different then. All right. Okay, the other question on the very last bullet. Some of the compensation, very last one that says a half a day. If they are working 5.5 hours, so they will have to work at least 2.75 hours to then be paid for the full day. If they have an appointment or something, they have to leave, is that correct?
Yes. I think historically, they would have people, just because it's summer, get a little bit willy-nilly on how their dedication to the program, so.
So it's just. I mean, if they do need to leave early, because they're supposed to be there till 1:30. So. If they had to leave. At 12 to get to an appointment by 1 or 1:30, then they would still be paid for. The day, correct? Because that would have been at least 4 hours, but.
They'll be paid for their hourly rate for the
For
time
the,
they work.
for the time they
Yeah,
work.
for the time they work.
Because this other one sounds like. So if they work 3 hours, they would be paid for 3 hours,
If they've met the halfway,
if they met the halfway, so if they were there 3 hours, they'd be paid for 3 hours. And then they just won't be paid for the other
correct.
2.5 hours.
All right, they're paid based on hours worked.
That's that question. I have a question. If, they're working and they're working for 2 hours and they have an emergency, they have to leave. The way this is written, they can get those 2 hours.
Correct. That's where it's written.
But that doesn't make sense, I mean, or could we at least put in there, you know. an
What
emergency?
constitutes an emergency? I mean,
No, they're,
Their daughter is sick. They have to go get her from daycare.
but you can see how they're, and I agree, that would be emergency.
So, but instead of
Set free.
penalizing them for that, can't we give them an incentive for staying the whole day instead of penalizing them because they have to leave for emergency? Because that's the way that's, and then you're also doing it where now you have to get someone to cover the whole time, if they can be there for 2.5 hours or 2 hours, but not the whole time.
I'd have to talk to my administrator about it.
I mean, it makes sense, I'm just, and that's why, of course, it was brought up, but, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I mean, I'm understanding the fact that, yeah, you would want the teachers there as much as possible, but if they had to leave early, they might take the whole day off versus a half a day, like what she's saying. But if there is an emergency, I mean, I get a phone call that, you know, my mother is, you know, in the hospital or whatever, even worse. I mean, then, yeah, I would want to leave.
I can talk to him about it. It wasn't born out of nowhere, right? I think it was probably when it was a flat rate for a day. Is where a lot of that came from, and that came from people not, you know, working the full times that they were committed to work. And I think in the summer, you you have people that waver on their commitments a lot more.
Pretty much the second time that they need to leave early or they show up late, they don't work there for the rest of the summer. I would hope that they
That's true,
exercise their.
yeah. So, I mean, we
The
can,
program is too short to have someone not show up.
Yeah, I mean, if they, cause they signed up for it, they know what the hours are, they know what everything is. I mean, I would think that they,
that's fine, I can talk to, the district administrators that are overseeing it and see what their thoughts on it, and that's something we can bring back, next week when we come together.
It'll work for free.
okay. Other than that, in the meantime, maybe I want to date some or something else that. So far, I mean, that's. Only does us, and we have the plan time, we have. We asked the other questions, so.
Do these grants only cover instructional pay?
No, I think there's some, it depending on the grant, some of it's covers, non-instructional, I don't know, it depends on what they need and what they, like, for secondary, you probably don't need a whole lot of non-instructional.
Well, you need a
So,
secretary
but-
for the payroll and you take guidance.
Well, your bookkeepers work 12 months, and you've got people that, and your administrators are working also, it just depends. But you've got, but ESY, like at Lake Hills, you got a ton of TAs, so, I mean, that's stuff that's funded, I would imagine, now IDEA.
I would assume that. The IDA. Somebody. Yeah.
There's just different demands for different programs.
Then we have the SI. And then it looks like you didn't want to differentiate between.
I do not, as we go back and we'll look at just the demand at those schools and really looking at how they're gonna be impacted by, you know, how they're gonna be impacted by proficiency and how their scores look and things of that nature. We just, all four of those schools are very fragile. And all four of them have, outliers on vacancies and need for, you know, for really good teachers to come in and assist with really good teachers that are there. So that's why we did not differentiate, between the four. I think, you know, we'll reach a point to where, and I think that's where some of, you know, I've heard some of the rubs that float around, right? Because when Beverly Shores and Leesburg were in some of their status compared to Leesburg or Triangle and Groveland, you know, there were some other funding sources. The state were doing some things different. You know, the circumstances around Beverly Shores was much more drastic as we were facing, you know, the options of state taking over and a private charter coming in and taking over the school, because they had reached a certain point. So, yeah, I can just say, look, all I can say is the funding and the money's different every year, but we want to try and do something to attract people to our four, you know, most struggling elementary schools that we have. So that's why we hope to keep the amounts there. And the other difference that I've mentioned you guys was the, you know, the additional required time was taken out of law, so we pulled that out too. Yep. And the reason this one, as I mentioned, that is time sensitive, because we would like for those principals and administrators to be able to advertise at the job fair. With the incentive to try and attract some talent to the school. Which is this Saturday.
Right, and that was the only thing that I was for sure about is the idea that first bullet is trying to make the little bit difference between, I understand the recruitment issue, which is the second bullet, you know, trying to get people there and stay there. I mean, I understood that. But $250, I mean, it was like Isn't there a little bit more you can give to the ones that are actually still in that status, because, there's a lot more. Does, Beverly Shores and Lakewood Elementary, they still do the, free plan days also?
Yeah, they're on that MOU, they do the plan.
3 individual planning periods per week.
Yeah, and then they added 2 additional requirements, like the DA status. I didn't think that they. were
The
still-
$250 was a bleed over from, in statute, we have to give something, right? So we, that was when we used to just meet the letter of the law with the statute, so rather than take that out, because we could, I mean, technically, we could say we're doing something by doing the 2,000 split.
Right, that's what I was gonna ask, is like, why is it split into 2 pieces? Why do you have 1,000 and 250, what?
It's just inherited into the MOU. The 250 is not tied to the timing of how it's paid and other, that was above and beyond. So that's just why it's
So you
traditionally
get
been
the 250 in August or September, you get the first 1,000, when you come back from winter break, you get the second 1,000 on the last day of school. So it's like 3 payments.
He's gonna check and see how it's processed, the 250 process. I agree.
I'm like, why,
But-
why process 2 separate things?
Because
unless you have to.
I think one is, just the purpose of them was different, and it's just inherited
Right,
into
yeah.
the agreement.
It's one of those stupid rules, how are you differentiating pay?
Speaking for the school psychologists, we just get assigned these schools, and it's not anything that's ever consideration is given for any kind of extra, and those tend to be very high needs schools. Lots of designated stuff.
To me, anybody that's assigned to these should be able to get supplement. Cause if they're working there, they should be able to get something.
How many employees would you have in those 4 schools that are shared with other schools besides school psychologists?
Maybe speech language and then psychologists, maybe social workers,
Okay.
OT, PT, perhaps.
They're not in.
Hmm.
Not very good,
Yeah. So,
but the other ones are.
Yes. the ones are.
Could we consider giving them a prorated amount if they're assigned 40% at Beverly Shores, and they would get 40% of the supplement?
I think I need to talk to student services and see, cause I don't know how they're assigned. I don't know, cause they can probably speak to it a little better, but, you know, I don't know if heck, at this point, they've got so much on their load. I'll say from a historical standpoint, when we were staffed a little bit better, I would probably guess if you had a heavy lift school, maybe you had a lighter school that would paired with it if you were split between schools. I don't know, but I'd like to talk to student services a little bit about that.
But it makes sense to me, I mean, if they're working there, I mean, they should get something. I mean, because they're working with. And may have more students that they're working with because of the school that are there, so.
And what I don't want, I just want to look into it because there's probably other schools that have an equal demand from a school psychologist standpoint. You know, if all of a sudden you're assigned to Eustis Heights and you've got a tremendous load of kids there also, that doesn't really, you know. I think there's been a lot of inspection on the workloads and what they've been doing, especially in this difficult time, so. It's something we need to look a little further into.
Are our evaluations still tied to test scores and things at those schools?
I'm sorry.
Our evaluations, the evaluations we get for our job evaluation, are they still tied to the school test scores?
Are they on history?
school psychologists are under instruction, or they get,
At one point.
But so are they, so their evaluation, are they under like whole school?
on school district, because if you're under the, if you're working for student services, which is typically what I see, you get a district score.
It's the whole district.
The whole
Now,
district.
At one point in time, I thought it was the school we were assigned to.
Correct, but it put it on an unfair advantage and disadvantage to the group that had the priority schools.
Correct.
So we kept it the same for all. It would be better, we kept it for the whole entire district because of who you support. Now, as that MOU on the 250 is 3 years in a row at D. So that's how they qualified for that.
Yeah, I saw the one, it's 3 years.
It's 3 years, so I haven't had one process yet because we don't have 3 years in a row with the D. This year, I have to wait for grades to come out in order to check to see who qualified for it going to process.
None of the individuals got in it, the 250 yet?
Not this year. Not this year, because I don't have if you look at the school grades, which one's 3 years in a row with the letter D? Or F?
That's just like the extra little extra.
If
Into
they-
that,
If they score, yeah, if they have a letter D for 3 years, because that's how it reads,
yeah, it says 3 years.
3 years.
It says in the class.
In the last. But it's not saying it has to be, it doesn't say that has to have three, but in the last,
In the.
it says in the last three, so that.
Let me look at, I'm gonna have to data drop that and see the payouts of people for the last 2 years.
Yeah, because I know some that have gotten it because it's in, so like I think this year, for example, Groveland got it.
I think they got it, but it's not processed an assignment, it's processed the payout, so I
Right.
can't see it.
So for example, Groveland and Triangle, I know,
Yeah.
received that $250.
I know we
So-
process it, I just
yeah.
don't see it right now as an
Yeah.
assignment, so I have to do research on processing.
So it's only if you're a year and a half. So for example, this year, Beverly Shores would not have gotten that
Right.
$250.
So
Because they were
Groveland.
D.
So let me go to Groveland.
So Groveland did and Triangle did. But Beverly Shores and Leesburg did not get that other $250.
Which
I was looking at Beverly
leads
Shores.
back to the first statement of differentiation between the schools. Not much, but
Yeah,
something.
not much.
Okay. That's 3, I did that. It's okay, it's it's spread out through the year. If that's what you're asking. I just Groveland, I just looked at a teacher in Groveland. And it has the assignment entered as 250 spread out through the year.
I think it's like $10.
Pretty much, it gets added along with the,
I mean, it's like, yeah, I mean, that's another.
well, no, but when you look at it, they get the performance pay, they get the $1,000 that they already processed, plus the 250 plus the 500. Because they also get the supplement Title I. Because they're Title I too.
I don't know anything about that, yeah.
They get multiple supplements, and that's good.
Like this, $250 isn't much for doing all the.
Oh, anyone ever knows their paycheck is right, to be honest with you. They're the good old days, everybody's just kind of the same.
Yeah.
You pencil down. So,
Yeah.
So Kathy said you're gonna check the dates on summer school and get back to.
Our dates are, I thought you said
On
us.
the summer one, and then you guys said that you're gonna ask about prorated. And then, the daily rate of pay for people in the summer school.
Now, what, say that
Wait, say
again?
that again, I'm sorry.
You're gonna look into the hourly rate for summer school, because right now, the way it's written, if they work 2 hours and have to leave, they don't get paid.
all that portion.
So,
Kathy was gonna check the dates, you were gonna check the rate, and then you were gonna look into the SI. Pro rata bonuses, how many people that would be affected, like social workers, just to see what that parameters are. I got a little confused there, just want to make sure.
sounds like,
I had a question on this.
Yeah,
Is this the master's value on those counties? Before base, correct?
before what?
This is all for all instruction, pretty much, or was this only for psychologists?
This is for the teachers.
All teachers,
The
okay.
teachers only.
From what my research that I've done, most of the psychologists, when they do have the supplement, it's the same as with the teacher supplement. So I believe those numbers would be good for the psychologists.
It's kind of like trying to read Egyptian hieroglyphics sometimes and deciphering how other people calculate things. Because unless they give you all their formulas, sometimes you can't ever really figure it out.
Okay.
But I can tell you what they do with Poland, which is they prorate all advanced degrees. So guidance counselors that work 11-month contracts get an 1 extra pay versus the 10 for the teachers. And those folks, the psychologists work 12 months, they get 12 stipends, broken up. First divided by 10, then multiplied by 12, so they get a 20% more than a teacher does. And we know Poland by heart.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was based on his defense. And you guys were the only ones that had that additional assignment piece, so there was nothing to compare that to. So
I was looking at all psychologists and almost all of them have it,
Have what,
the additional piece.
that additional.
Yeah.
Not in our paychecks. I mean, I don't
Or
know if I
maybe,
need to talk to about that, but.
or maybe it's an understanding of how it shows up in Skyward too, because sometimes
Correct.
things are combined that you don't understand.
yeah,
So
I
it's flexible, but you have
think
to-
someone with a PhD in economics to explain.
I
a
can
paycheck.
sit aside with you on the side.
Yes,
We can,
yes. That's the best way to do it, is to go through a check and see what's there so that you can understand it. All right, so we're sending you around our public records request, and I'm gonna send it to you by email.
okay,
Is there 2 copies, one for Chad, one for Reno?
That's for them, yes,
Okay, because it looks the same.
it is, it's just for them. Cause they each have part of it. But it's the same data dump that we'd gotten last year at the same time.
Gotcha.
So we're just doing the official request to get the data before too much later.
And on that same note with data, I don't know whether this is just like a chat and us conversation with the recognition page, but this, the actual PERC certification has not been updated for many years. In the list of people,
Mhm.
and so this needs to be updated. Through PERC.
clarifying,
Yes,
Okay.
clarifying everybody that's in the unit.
okay,
It has not been done since 1990.
okay,
The titles don't match up at all.
I bet.
Yeah, so last time when we did a data dump,
Would you like to know what they're called?
we need to have all the job positions, and I think that's what you guys call them in your data, was the job position. Or position description.
we
Because,
have position and then assignment.
right, but if we don't have assignment, this assignment says like 4th grade teacher.
Yeah.
And we don't have, break it down to that, we just have teacher. But the data that we looked at, because we had just honed in on general fund, it didn't have any psychologists in it, it didn't have any social workers in it, so I know that the list that we were looking at earlier today is incomplete, so that's one of the reasons we need the data dump, so we can look at all of the job titles.
So you want
Make
the
sure.
position and the assignment.
Yeah.
That's fine.
We're gonna try to clean up, and once we get this completed list, we wanna talk with you guys, because we wanna send in a mutually acceptable, this is our list of people to PERS. So that they can say, yep, here's your new certification with your titles.
And it's all done because, We have teacher of the migrants on here. We have helping teacher. Right. I mean, some of these names, it's like, you know, teachers of homebound, we do have homebound teachers, but usually it's within, you know, you're doing something else and then you're extra. I mean, some of these names are just like, this is interesting. History here, history.
It's been a while.
So that's just something we have to.
You're not supposed to do it every 30 years.
Yeah. Or more. We recommend 10.
All right,
A
we'll
lot of date.
we'll get you, the stuff you requested ASAP.
Like, it might be something that we really.
Well, and it's gonna be critical if for some reason when the recertification goes through, PERF is only gonna count the names that match up. The job title. And that means we're gonna lose a lot of cards because those job titles won't match.
Okay. So we added insurance to the plate, so I can give kind of a brief overview, and then Elizabeth's an insurance expert now. She can probably correct me where I get things wrong. She asks the questions that we're always too scared to ask, so, that we all get clarification, so I appreciate her contributions in that area, so. So as mentioned, it was workshop, with the board, and just so people kind of know the current structure of insurance. The board covers 95% of the cost, and that 95% of that cost is based on the current 03559 plan. So what we're looking at, the big change, you know, a few years back, we were below the required, we were teetering right on the line of the required fund balance overall for the state, for the district. And we were also well below what's required, the 60 days for in your self-insurance fund. So we used to be able to you could write a letter if you have enough money in your overall district fund balance to cover that 60 days, and you could get through the audit, but we were at a point where that was not true. So, we temporarily increased contributions to get to that state to where we had the claims in the balance. And then we moved, from there, we got really healthy, COVID hit, everything got wonky, claims went way down. We developed a higher fund balance than what we figured we would, claims went back up. Now we're on schedule to have to be deficient. So we need to make some moves to try and, make some adjustments in plans and hopefully offset some of being behind, and it'd be less that had to be covered. So in that, what's really unique and the big change is we've eliminated our lowest deductible plan, which is a $500 deductible, and replaced it with what's a third-party administrator plan that has a restricted network of just your Orlando Health and just your CAMS health facilities. And those are nice in that there's still $0 to the single individual. And we have 3 plans that are like that. And then, but with this one, there's copay, there's the copays, and that's something that people understand, $0 deductible and copays. So it's a really good option. But just like when you kind of like the old HMOs, if you switch to a limited network, you're going to have some disruption in current service providers to your people. There's a disruption of about 80% of switching to that plan for the individuals, but it still offers a really good plan to our people. Also within that, the cost for an ER visit went from flat $250 to $350. If you know anything with insurance, you want to discourage those, ER room visits because they're very expensive and they weigh on your plan very heavy. So that was kind of the addition of that copay plan, which is the TPA. And then your 03559 plan, which everybody refers to as the $750 deductible plan, that deductible was raised to $1,000. The hope is you've got a good option that's low cost to folks, but then also an option that raises the deductible on the base plan, and we should see some movement to the new style plan or to some of the other plans. But that's kind of in a nutshell. If you want to get further in the weeds, I recommend maybe tune in and go watch the workshop from Monday and get a little more information from there.
Speaking of the workshop, are the actual health documents now on the school board? So they said that they weren't on.
From the presentations from that day, yes, they are there. I checked today. Yeah.
Somebody went to go get them and they said they weren't on there. So I said, oh, I just give them a couple days.
So,
Okay, and I know they talked about, at the workshop, talked about the communication piece.
yes.
Will we be given, I guess, the opportunity or knowing how the communication is going to be sent out and what's happening? If nothing else, maybe we can have like, subcommittee to talk about insurances, maybe to know what's going on. Or continue our actual insurance meetings, however you want to do this, or whether it's like a bargaining subcommittee or whatever to.
I mean, what I would recommend is that, being that you guys have a significant presence on the insurance committee, is, we don't restrict access. If somebody wants to come and sit and spectate on that, then that's where you're gonna get your most quality information, I feel like. I think we all understand it and have been drugged to it enough that we know enough to be dangerous, but as far as teaching it to other people, I'm not sure that I'm at that level. But I do have a good understanding of what we're looking at, but it's been a journey to get to where we're at. And you guys have been a big part of all that, so.
And that's fine. I do think we may have to have a subcommittee though, talking a little bit about, to discuss the 112 information, because we have some questions on that information, which would be probably to Scott and you, possibly Rob. But we maybe have a subcommittee.
On which piece?
The
Office of Insurance Regulation filing,
Okay.
because when you look at the report, you see that for the last 3 years, the total amount of premium income collected by the district has declined from 53 million in the year 1920, so ending June 20, to now ending June 22, 47 million. But we didn't have a significant difference in the number of people that were covered, the number of lives covered. And so it was just like, why did we collect, $5 million less? When we only had 100 people less that were covered. Because that was during the pandemic and we couldn't fill positions and it was difficult. But you would think that would add up to $5 million.
I would say that's definitely something we need to discuss with Josh and Rob,
Right.
and I would, if I was you guys, I'd definitely bring that to the next insurance committee meeting. And in the meantime, you can send those questions and we can get answers to them.
Do we have a date for the next meeting?
What's that?
Do we have a date for the next meeting yet?
For the next insurance.
For the next insurance meeting?
I'm
not sure.
I'm on this.
Yeah, I know. I'm not sure. I'll have to go back and look. I don't even know. I know that he's got to, as soon as, I know he did communicate to us, as soon as board approval goes through on Monday, then he's diving straight into communication plan. I think he told us he was gonna communicate with us what that what the details of that communication plan were gonna be, but I don't know if there's one calendar or not, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I don't think one was set, we didn't talk about it,
Okay.
our meeting was 4 hours, so we
Yeah.
can set another meeting.
Yeah. We met a lot on insurance. So that the communication plan is gonna be extensive. It's gonna be a tremendous amount of face-to-face as we move towards open enrollment. It benefits everybody the more we communicate. So I think people are gonna be tired of hearing about it by the time we're done. And they're gonna take multiple avenues that they discuss to get there. So, any other questions on insurance? I know we,
You're saying it was Zoom launch and I can join you, I just don't know where I'm gonna be, yeah. Popular.
Nothing else, maybe we can compile some questions, and nothing else, maybe we can send them to them so that they can get answers, and then we can have, like, a Zoom to kind of get the questions and answers, and go from there.
I think the key is getting all those tough questions to Rob Boyer and then we can, that's step number one. I know we've got a day scheduled for next Thursday at you guys' place for our next session. I don't know, I know Angela seems like she wants to look at some other potential dates. Is that what I was understanding?
Yeah, because if you guys don't get on my calendar. I have another local that's going to gobble up every available date. That's left in my calendar. They want me 3 days a week. But no, we can bargain 3 days a week, that's too much. I know that you guys have said that you had like May 7th or 10th or something like that. I'm not gonna be available from May 2nd through the May. I'll be back on the 22nd, unfortunately. But you guys are welcome to talk about anything else you want to talk about, but I can't do anything right now.
During what time?
I'm leaving on May 2nd and I will be back on May 22nd. It's not ideal, but you know,
I mean, that's up to you guys. I mean, obviously, we're available more than that. So,
Chad, can you say the other dates again that we talked about today, the 10, correct?
yes,
10 and 17.
Yeah, 10 and 17. Still available.
okay. I would ask that we choose.
Unless we switch and make the 17th a little bit later, since it's only the 1 week.
We could do
Or
the,
do the 17th instead of the 10th, I mean, whichever, I don't know.
I would say,
We'll say for high school people.
Yeah.
That's our graduation week, so it will be crazy. I
Yeah,
probably
but
see teachers as well in there.
The 10th is gonna be a bad day.
graduation week is the 17th, right?
Yes, yeah.
So,
So if we do the 10. And then.
You kind of need at least a week off in between getting the
yeah, and I've got another unit I got to bargain with, that I've got to squeeze in, so.
Yeah.
That unit doesn't hit our high school folks as much as these guys.
And the 31st.
So,
I would say if we could set the 10th and the 24th. And that's probably all I'm comfortable with at this point. I've got to set some dates with SEIU, and Wednesdays work really well for them also, so.
10 and 24.
Yeah.
Then you guys will just have to decide what you want to talk about and then come to that. We can have it.
Okay, so that is 24th. Okay, and then we go into, by the 24th, you still probably don't have numbers.
We'll see.
We have a better idea where we're gonna get numbers.
Yeah, well, we should have some more information as we go. I'm hoping as they wrap up some of these committee meetings, they'll start to divulge a little more and get on the same page, so. Yeah, we like trying to get ahead as we can, so we're not scrambling.
And after May, of course, then the teachers are gonna be, I mean, we can do it. Most of us probably during the day, every day anyway, so.
Yeah.
We could, come out quite a bit. And I think that's where she was saying that we're done 30. 30 with the speaker. So I think that's why she was also saying we do the. Try to get like a day or two possibly in June, just because she gets booked up so much, but.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to work with just Wednesday.
The first 2 weeks of June, the first week I'm not here, and the second week we have summer leadership.
Yes,
So it will be that third and fourth week in June.
So third. Or fourth. So fourth week is like 19 through 22.
Yes,
We meet on the 26th, you have to buy a birthday cake.
we can do that.
That's my only rule for me, on my birthday, gotta have cake.
We come in on Sunday the 18th, yeah, give me a Father's Day gift.
You got it. You hedge trimmers?
oh, he needs like banded.
I do.
Yeah.
A rough year on
Fancy
the old chrome dome. All right, well, we'll get some of those ironed out and,
Sounds good.
all right. Anybody have anything else for the good of the group? My group, if y'all can walk kind of my direction, so I can talk to y'all for just a minute. And I promise I won't keep you more than 5 minutes. All right, that concludes today's bargaining session. It is 5:30 on April 19th, 2023. Thank you guys very much.
We stay in this room.